The wheel splintered off the axle just as the stagecoach crested the ridge above Devil's Canyon, and Beatrice Roswell knew in that terrible, suspended moment that she was going to die in the middle of nowhere. 2,000 miles from Boston and the comfortable life she had abandoned for reasons that now seemed impossibly foolish. The coach lurched sideways, passengers screaming as luggage crashed against bodies, and wood shrieked its protest. Beatrice grabbed for the leather strap, but her gloved fingers slipped, and suddenly the world was tumbling, spinning, the California sky and dusty earth trading places as the stagecoach rolled down the embankment. She heard the driver shouting, horses screaming in terror, and then a tremendous crack as they hit something solid. The door beside her flew open, and Beatrice was thrown clear, her body sailing through hot desert air before slamming into sun-baked ground that knocked every bit of breath from her lungs. She lay there gasping, tasting copper and dust, her vision swimming with dark spots. Somewhere nearby the horses were still shrieking, harnesses tangling as they fought to break free. The stagecoach had come to rest on its side 20 feet down the slope, one wheel still spinning lazily. Beatrice tried to move and pain lanced through her ribs, sharp enough to make her cry out. Her traveling dress was torn, the fine green silk her mother had insisted she bring now shredded and covered in red dust. Blood trickled from a cut above her eyebrow. She heard boots crunching on gravel, moving fast, and managed to turn her head. A man was running toward the wreckage, his silhouette backlit by the merciless June sun of 1868. He wore dusty range clothes and a wide-brimmed hat, and he moved with the easy confidence of someone who belonged to this harsh landscape in a way Beatrice never would. "Easy now," he said, dropping to his knees beside her. His face came into focus. Sun-weathered skin, dark hair that needed cutting, gray eyes that assessed her with sharp intelligence. Young, maybe 25, with strong features that would have made Boston mothers clutch their daughters closer. "Can you breathe? Anything feel broken?" "I do not know," Beatrice managed, her voice coming out as barely more than a whisper. "I cannot catch my breath. You got the wind knocked out of you. Just lie still." His hands moved over her arms and legs with practiced efficiency, checking for breaks. Despite the situation, Beatrice felt her face flush at the intimacy of a stranger's touch. "I am a cattle hand, not a doctor, but I have set enough broken bones to know what I am looking for. Does this hurt?" He pressed gently against her ribs and she hissed in pain. "Yes." "Probably cracked, maybe bruised. You will live, though you will wish you were dead when you laugh for the next few weeks." He glanced back at the overturned stagecoach. 2 other passengers were climbing out, shaken but apparently uninjured. The driver was trying to calm the horses. "That was one hell of a tumble. You are lucky you got thrown clear. That coach could have rolled right over you." "I do not feel particularly lucky at the moment." Despite everything, he smiled. It transformed his face, softening the hard edges. "I suppose not, Miss Roswell." "Beatrice Roswell. Walker Quinn. I was riding into Sonora when I saw your coach lose that wheel. Shoddy maintenance, if you ask me. That axle was probably cracked for weeks." He slipped an arm behind her shoulders. "Think you can sit up? I want to get you away from the slope in case anything else decides to come rolling down." "I can try." The world spun sickeningly as he helped her upright, but his arm stayed firm around her shoulders, steadying her. Beatrice found herself leaning against his chest, breathing in the smell of leather and horse and honest sweat, so different from the perfumed gentlemen of Boston drawing rooms. Walker supported her weight without apparent effort, guiding her across the uneven ground to a flat boulder in the shade of a scraggly oak. "I am never letting you fall again," he said as he helped her sit, his voice carrying an unexpected intensity that made her look up sharply. Their eyes met and held, and something passed between them that Beatrice did not have words for. It felt like recognition, as if some part of her soul knew him already. She looked away first, unsettled. "That is quite a promise from someone I just met. I mean it." He crouched beside her, pulling a canteen from his belt. "Here, drink. Small sips. That cut on your head needs cleaning, but the water is more important right now." The water was warm and tasted of metal, but it was the most wonderful thing Beatrice had ever drunk. She took several swallows before handing it back. "Thank you. I do not know what I would have done if you had not been here. You would have managed. You look like the type who finds a way." Walker stood and shaded his eyes, looking at the wrecked stagecoach. "Driver says the replacement wheel is strapped underneath, but it is going to take hours to get the coach upright and make repairs. Probably will not be rolling again until tomorrow morning. Sonora is about 8 miles north. I can ride for help, or—" He hesitated, studying her. "My ranch is only 2 miles east. Small place, just me and my hired man, but we have a roof and proper beds. You could rest there while I ride into town for a doctor." Beatrice knew what her mother would say about going anywhere alone with a strange man. She could hear the scandalized gasp, the lecture about reputation and propriety. But her mother was 2,000 miles away, and Beatrice had not come west to follow the same suffocating rules that had made her Boston life unbearable. "Your ranch sounds preferable to sitting in the dust all night," she said. "Though I confess I am not sure I can ride. I have never been particularly skilled with horses even when not injured. You will ride with me. My horse can carry us both easily enough." Walker extended his hand. "Come on, Miss Roswell. Let us get you somewhere safe." She took his hand, and when she stood the world tilted again. Walker caught her before she could fall, his arms strong and sure. For a moment she was pressed against him, feeling the solid warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart. His breath stirred her hair. "I have got you," he murmured, and Beatrice believed him in a way she had never believed any of the careful, calculated promises from the men her parents had paraded before her in Boston. Walker helped her over to where his horse was tethered, a sturdy roan gelding that watched their approach with calm eyes. He spoke to the driver, who agreed to send word to Sonora about the delay, then swung up into the saddle with easy grace. He reached down for Beatrice. "Put your foot on mine and give me your hands. I will pull you up." It was awkward and painful, but moments later she was seated in front of him, cradled against his chest as his arms came around her to grip the reins. The position was scandalously intimate, but Beatrice was too tired and hurt to care. She let herself lean back against him, feeling the shift of his muscles as he guided the horse into an easy walk. They rode east into country that looked like nothing she had ever seen. Red gold hills rolled away under a sky so blue it hurt to look at, studded with rocks and sparse vegetation that somehow survived in the brutal heat. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow despite the summer warmth in the valleys. It was harsh and alien and beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. "Why did you come west?" Walker asked after they had ridden in silence for a while. "You do not strike me as the type of woman who usually ends up on a California stagecoach. What type of woman do I strike you as? Rich? Educated? Used to drawing rooms and tea parties, not trail dust?" His tone was neutral, but she caught an edge of something that might have been judgment. Beatrice stiffened. "You are not wrong, but you are not entirely right either. I came west because I refused to marry the man my parents had chosen for me. A banker's son, perfectly respectable, absolutely tedious. My parents said I was throwing away my future. I said I would rather have no future than the one they wanted to force on me. So you ran away. I took a position as a schoolteacher in a mining town called Chinese Camp. The advertisement promised decent wages and housing. I thought teaching children would give me purpose, meaning. I thought I could make a difference out here. She laughed bitterly. My parents did not speak to me when I left. My mother cried. My father said I was no daughter of his if I insisted on this foolishness. Walker was quiet for a moment. That took courage, or stupidity. I am beginning to think they are the same thing. They are not. I know the difference. His arms tightened slightly around her, protective. My father was a drunk who beat my mother until she died giving birth to a stillborn baby when I was 15. Everyone in town knew, but nobody did anything because he was a man, and it was his right to discipline his wife as he saw fit. After Ma died, I stayed long enough to bury her proper, then I stole $50 from his cash box and headed west. Figured I would rather die free than live one more day under his roof. Beatrice turned her head to look at him. I am sorry, that must have been terrible. It was 10 years ago. I have made my peace with it. But she could hear the old pain in his voice, carefully controlled. Point is, leaving takes courage, building something new takes more. You did the right thing, Miss Roswell, Beatrice. If we are going to share life stories and I am sitting in your lap on a horse, you should probably call me Beatrice. He smiled at that. Beatrice. Pretty name, old-fashioned. After my grandmother, she was the only one in the family who understood why I wanted to leave. She gave me money for the journey, said she wished she had been brave enough to run when she was young. Beatrice shifted, trying to find a position that did not make her ribs scream. What did you do when you came west? Worked cattle drives, broke horses. Did some prospecting that did not pan out. Saved every penny I could until I had enough to buy land. Got 40 acres and a water spring about 3 years ago. It is not much, but it is mine. No one can take it away from me. That sounds like a good life. It is lonely sometimes. The admission seemed to surprise him. Most nights it is just me and the stars and the coyotes. Makes a man think too much. What do you think about? Walker did not answer immediately. The horse picked its way around a cluster of boulders, and in the distance Beatrice could see a small wooden structure that must be his ranch house. Smoke rose from the chimney. Whether this is all there is, he said finally. Whether I will spend my whole life working land that barely gives back enough to survive on. Whether I will die alone out here with nobody to remember my name. He paused. Sorry, that is probably more honesty than you wanted. No, Beatrice said softly. I asked, and I understand. I think about similar things. Whether running away was just trading one form of loneliness for another. Whether freedom means anything if you have no one to share it with. Maybe we are both thinking too much. Maybe. They reached the ranch house, a simple structure of rough-hewn logs with a stone chimney and a covered porch. A barn stood nearby, along with a small corral that held several horses. A weathered man in his 50s emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. That you, boss? Thought you were going into town for supplies. Change of plans, Miguel. Stagecoach overturned on the ridge. This is Miss Beatrice Roswell. She needs a place to rest while I ride for the doctor. Miguel's eyes widened as he took in Beatrice's disheveled state. Dios mío. Yes, of course. Bring her inside. I will make tea. Walker dismounted and reached up for Beatrice. She slid down into his arms, and again she felt that strange spark where their bodies touched. He carried her up the porch steps and through the door into a dim interior that smelled of wood smoke and coffee. The inside of the house was spare but clean. A stone fireplace dominated one wall with a rough wooden table and chairs nearby. A cook stove stood in the corner, and shelves held supplies and a few books. 2 doors led to what must be sleeping quarters. It was simple and honest, like the man himself. Walker laid her gently on a worn settee near the fireplace. Miguel will get you settled. I will ride for Doc Harrison. He is based in Sonora, but he makes rounds to the outlying ranches. With luck, I will find him on the road. You do not have to do all this for me. I know." He looked down at her, his gray eyes serious. "But I want to. Just rest, Beatrice. You are safe here." Then he was gone, his boots loud on the wooden floor, the door closing behind him. Beatrice heard him speaking to Miguel in low tones, then the sound of hoofbeats fading into the distance. Miguel appeared with a cup of weak tea and a damp cloth. "Let me clean that cut, señorita. It is not so bad, but head wounds bleed like the devil." She let him tend to her, his hands gentle and efficient. He had the look of a man who had lived a hard life but somehow kept his kindness intact. As he worked, he told her about the ranch, how he had worked for Walker for 2 years now, how the young man was fair and honest and worked harder than any 3 men combined. "He is a good man," Miguel said, dabbing at the cut. "Lonely, though. He does not talk much about his past, but I can see the shadows in his eyes sometimes. A young man like that should have a wife, children, but he keeps everyone at a distance, like he is afraid to let anyone get close. Perhaps he has been hurt before. Haven't we all, señorita?" Miguel sat back, surveying his work. "There, you will have a fine bruise, but the cut is clean. Now you should rest. I will make some broth. You need to eat something." Beatrice closed her eyes, exhaustion washing over her. The events of the day seemed unreal now, like something from a fever dream. She had nearly died. This morning she had been a passenger on a stagecoach bound for Chinese camp, nervous about her new position but excited to start fresh. Now she was lying in a stranger's home, her body aching, her future uncertain. But when she thought of Walker's arms around her, his quiet promise that he would never let her fall again, something warm bloomed in her chest. It was absurd. She had known him for less than 2 hours. Yet somehow he felt more real, more present, than any of the carefully vetted suitors her parents had introduced her to over the years. She drifted into an uneasy sleep, dreaming of overturning coaches and strong hands pulling her from the wreckage, of gray eyes that saw through all her carefully constructed defenses. When she woke, the light had changed, the sun lower in the sky. Voices drifted from outside, and then the door opened. Walker entered with an older man carrying a black medical bag. The doctor was short and round, with wire-rimmed spectacles and a kind face. "Miss Roswell, I am Dr. Harrison. Walker tells me you took quite a tumble. Let us have a look at you." The examination was thorough but gentle. Dr. Harrison pronounced her ribs bruised but not broken, prescribed rest and limited movement for at least a week, and warned her against traveling until she had healed more completely. "The Chinese camp road is rough," he said, snapping his bag closed. "Another stagecoach ride right now could do real damage. You need to stay somewhere quiet and rest. Do you have family in the area?" "No. I was traveling to take a teaching position. I do not know anyone in California." Dr. Harrison looked at Walker, who had been standing quietly by the door. "She needs to stay put for at least a week, probably 2. Can she remain here?" "Yes," Walker said without hesitation. "She can have my room. I will bunk in the barn." "Walker, I cannot impose on you like that," Beatrice protested. "Perhaps there is a boarding house in Sonora. The boarding house is full up with minors," Dr. Harrison interrupted. "It is summer, peak season. You would be lucky to find floor space, let alone a proper room." He turned to Walker. "You have space here and Miguel can act as chaperone." It is not conventional, but these are not conventional circumstances. The girl needs rest and quiet, not a bumpy wagon ride into town and a crowded boarding house. Walker crossed to the settee and crouched beside Beatrice. "Stay, please. I know it is not proper, but out here we care more about practicality than propriety. You will be safe, and you can heal properly before continuing your journey." Beatrice looked into his eyes and saw genuine concern there, and something else she could not quite name. Every sensible bone in her body screamed that this was inappropriate, that a respectable woman did not stay unchaperoned at a bachelor's ranch. But she had stopped being conventionally respectable the moment she boarded that train in Boston. "If you are certain it is not too much trouble," she said slowly. "No trouble at all." Dr. Harrison left instructions for her care and promised to return in a few days to check on her progress. After he rode away, Miguel served a simple dinner of beef stew and cornbread. Beatrice ate at the table while Walker and Miguel discussed ranch business, their easy camaraderie speaking of long association and mutual respect. After dinner, Walker showed her to his room, a small space with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a washstand. The walls were bare except for a faded map of California and a rifle mounted on pegs. "I will bring in your luggage from my saddlebags once I have retrieved it from the stagecoach," Walker said. "Miguel washed the spare bedding yesterday, so everything should be clean. If you need anything in the night, just call out. I will be in the barn, but I am a light sleeper." "Walker." She caught his arm as he turned to leave. "Thank you for everything. You did not have to help me, but you did. I will not forget that." He covered her hand with his palm warm and calloused. "I am glad I was there. When I saw that coach go over, when I saw you lying there in the dust, I thought you were dead. I have never been so relieved to see someone breathing. You do not even know me." "No," he agreed. "But I would like to, if that is not too forward." Heat crept into her cheeks. "It is extremely forward, but I would like that too." He smiled, that transformation again that softened all the hard edges. "Then we have 2 weeks to get acquainted. Try to rest, Beatrice. Tomorrow will be easier." After he left, Beatrice changed into the nightgown Miguel had thoughtfully provided, probably purchased from some previous ranch visitor or borrowed from somewhere. She lay in Walker's narrow bed, surrounded by his scent, and stared at the ceiling. Outside she could hear night sounds, crickets, the distant yip of coyotes, the soft sounds of horses settling in the corral. She should have been frightened, alone in this wild place with strangers. Instead, she felt safer than she had in months. Maybe safer than she had ever felt in Boston, where danger wore polished manners and hid behind wealth and position. The days that followed fell into an easy rhythm. Beatrice spent her mornings resting, reading books from Walker's small collection, surprisingly eclectic, ranging from agricultural manuals to Shakespeare to a worn copy of 2 Years Before the Mast. In the afternoons, when the heat was most intense, she sat on the porch and watched Walker and Miguel work, mending fences or breaking horses, or simply maintaining the countless small tasks a ranch required. Walker would join her in the evenings after washing up at the pump, and they would talk as the sun set and the air finally cooled. He told her about learning to survive on the trail, about winters so cold he thought he would lose fingers to frostbite, about the first time he saw his land and knew he was home. She told him about growing up in Boston, about the suffocating expectations of high society, about sneaking into her father's library to read books that young ladies were not supposed to enjoy. "I wanted to go to college," she confessed one evening. "I wanted to study literature, maybe even write. But that was not an option for someone like me. Women of my class are meant to be ornamental, not intellectual. We are supposed to marry well and host dinner parties and produce heirs. The idea that we might have thoughts or ambitions of our own is considered unseemly." Walker was whittling a piece of wood, his hands moving with practiced ease. "That seems like a waste. You have one of the sharpest minds I have ever encountered. Why would anyone want to suppress that?" Because intelligent women are threatening. We ask questions. We want explanations. We refuse to accept that something is right simply because it has always been done that way. She watched his hands work, fascinated by the skill and patience required. What are you making? A toy. Miguel's daughter in Sonora just had a baby. I thought I would carve something for the little one. He held up what was emerging from the wood, a small horse, surprisingly detailed. I am not much of an artist, but I do all right. It is beautiful. You are very talented. He shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Just something to do with my hands in the evening. Gets lonely out here sometimes, like I said. Gives me something to focus on besides my own thoughts. Do you ever think about leaving, going back east, or maybe to San Francisco? No. The answer was immediate and firm. Cities feel like cages to me now. Too many people, too much noise, too many rules about how to live. Out here, I make my own choices. I succeed or fail based on my own efforts, not on whether I bow to the right people or say the right things. It is hard, but it is honest. That matters to me. It matters to me too, Beatrice said quietly. That is why I left Boston. I wanted an honest life, even if it meant giving up comfort and security. Walker set down his knife and looked at her directly. Do you regret it, leaving everything behind? She considered the question seriously. No. I regret that my parents could not understand that I hurt them by going, but I do not regret the choice itself. For the first time in my life, I feel like I am living instead of just existing. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. He picked up his knife again, but his eyes stayed on her. You are not what I expected, Beatrice Roswell. What did you expect? Someone more fragile. Someone who would have demanded to be taken to the fanciest hotel in town, who would have turned up her nose at beans and cornbread, who would have complained about every little discomfort. But you have not complained once. You read my books and talked to Miguel about his grandchildren and watched the horses like you are seeing them for the first time. You fit here in a way I did not think a Boston lady could. Beatrice felt warmth spread through her chest. I like it here. I like the quiet, the space. I like that when you promise something, you mean it. I like that you see me as a person, not just a decorative object or a potential broodmare for some ambitious family. I could never see you as decorative, Walker said, and there was something in his voice that made her breath catch. You are too real for that, too alive. Their eyes met and held, and the air between them felt charged, electric. Beatrice was suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how easy it would be to lean forward, to close the distance. She wanted to kiss him with a fierceness that shocked her. She had never wanted to kiss anyone before, not really. The few chaste pecks she had endured from suitors had left her cold, but the thought of Walker's mouth on hers made heat pool low in her belly. She looked away first, flustered. I should probably rest. My ribs are aching. Of course. If he was disappointed, he hid it well. Sleep well, Beatrice. She went inside but did not sleep for a long time. She lay in his bed and thought about the way he said her name, the way his hands moved when he worked, the quiet strength that radiated from him like heat from a stone. She thought about how her heart had started beating faster whenever he walked into a room, how her skin felt sensitized and aware when he was near. She was falling in love with him. It was absurd, impossible, too fast, but it was also undeniably true. On the 8th day of her stay, Dr. Harrison returned and pronounced her much improved. Another week and you should be fit for travel, he said. Though I must say, this place seems to agree with you. You look better than I expected. After the doctor left, Beatrice felt a hollow ache in her chest. Another week and she would leave. She would continue to Chinese camp and take up her teaching position. She would probably never see Walker again. The thought was unbearable. That afternoon, she walked down to the corral where Walker was working with a young mare, teaching her to accept a saddle. She leaned against the fence and watched him move, his patience with the nervous animal evident in every gesture. "She is beautiful," Beatrice called. Walker looked up and smiled. "Skittish, but smart. She will make a good cow pony once she learns to trust me." He led the mare over to the fence. "Want to try petting her?" Beatrice reached out slowly, letting the horse sniff her hand before stroking the soft nose. The mare's eyes were large and liquid, her muscles twitching under the glossy coat. "I never spent much time around horses in Boston," Beatrice said. "We had a carriage, but someone else always handled the horses. They seemed large and dangerous. They can be if you do not respect them. But if you learn their language, if you show them you will not hurt them, they will trust you. Horses are honest. They do not lie or pretend. You always know where you stand with them. I wish people were more like that. Some are." He covered her hand with his where it rested on the fence rail. "Beatrice, I need to say something. I know you are leaving soon, and I know I have no right to ask anything of you. But these past days, having you here, talking with you, watching you become part of this place, I do not want you to go." Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Walker, let me finish, please." He took a breath. "I know we have only known each other a little over a week. I know you have a job waiting for you in Chinese camp. But I need you to know that what I feel for you is not some passing fancy. When I pulled you out of that wreckage, when I said I would never let you fall again, I meant it. I meant it in ways I did not even understand at the time. I feel it too," she whispered. "I thought I was losing my mind. How can I feel this way about someone I barely know? But when I think about leaving, about never seeing you again, it feels like someone is tearing my heart out." Walker vaulted over the fence with easy grace, landing beside her. He took both her hands in his eyes searching her face. "Then do not go. Stay here with me." "As what?" "Your housekeeper. She could not bring herself to say the word. "As my wife, if you will have me." He said it simply, directly, as if he were commenting on the weather. "I do not have much to offer. This ranch barely turns a profit most years. You would be working from dawn to dusk, cooking and cleaning and helping with the stock. It would be hard, probably harder than anything you have known. But I swear to you, Beatrice, I would spend every day trying to make you happy. I would give you space to read and think and be yourself. I would never try to make you into something you are not." Tears burned in her eyes. "I was supposed to teach. I was supposed to make a difference. You would make a difference here. Miguel wants to bring his daughter and her baby to live in the barn loft, but there is no woman to help her, no one to teach the child to read when the time comes. And there are 3 other ranch families within 10 miles. They all have children who need schooling. You could teach them if you wanted, or you could do something else entirely. Write those stories you talked about, study the land and the plants, whatever calls to you. I just want you here, Beatrice. I want to wake up every morning knowing you are beside me. I want to build a life with you." She looked into his eyes and saw everything she had been searching for without knowing it: honesty, respect, a partnership instead of ownership, and love raw and new but undeniably real. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I will marry you." Walker let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled her into his arms. He held her carefully, mindful of her healing ribs, his face buried in her hair. "I will make you happy, I swear it. You already do." He pulled back just enough to look at her, and then slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he lowered his mouth to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, asking permission. Beatrice answered by pressing closer, her hands coming up to frame his face. The kiss deepened, grew hungry, and she felt desire flood through her like liquid fire. Nothing in her sheltered life had prepared her for this, for the way her entire body seemed to wake up and demand more. When they finally broke apart, Both breathing hard, Walker rested his forehead against hers. "We should probably tell Miguel, and ride into Sonora to find a preacher. I want to marry you as soon as possible, before you come to your senses and realize you are agreeing to tie yourself to a broke rancher with more ambition than good sense." Beatrice laughed. "I think my senses left me the moment I looked up and saw you running toward that wreckage. I have been operating on pure instinct ever since. Good instincts, though, the best I have ever had." They told Miguel that evening, and the older man's face split into a huge grin. "I knew it. From the first day I told my daughter, I said these two are meant for each other. You can see it in how they look at each other." He clapped Walker on the shoulder. "Congratulations, boss. You are getting a good woman. I know it, better than I deserve." "Nobody deserves anybody," Miguel said philosophically. "We just get lucky sometimes. And you too, you got very lucky." The next morning, Walker hitched up the wagon and they rode into Sonora together. The town was bustling with miners and merchants, the gold rush still drawing hopeful people from around the world, even though the easy pickings were long gone. They found the preacher at the small church on the edge of town, a kind-faced man who agreed to perform the ceremony that very afternoon. "I do not require much notice," Reverend Matthews said with a smile. "And I have learned not to question when two people know their own hearts. The frontier has taught me that life is too short and too uncertain to waste time on lengthy courtships. If you are sure, then I am happy to bind you in marriage." They were married 2 hours later in the simple church, with Miguel and Dr. Harrison as witnesses. Beatrice wore her least damaged traveling dress, hastily cleaned and mended. Walker wore his best shirt, his hair slicked back with water. They stood before the altar and spoke vows that felt like the most honest words Beatrice had ever said. When Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Walker kissed her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. This was real. This was forever. And she had chosen it freely, without pressure or expectation, or anyone's plan but her own. They spent their wedding night in the ranch house, in Walker's room that was now their room. Miguel had diplomatically announced he would be sleeping in the barn to give the newlyweds privacy. Walker carried Beatrice over the threshold, making her laugh even as her ribs protested. "I am supposed to carry you," he said, setting her gently on the bed. "I know your ribs hurt, but I wanted to do at least one traditional thing. I liked it." She reached up and pulled him down beside her. "Walker, I need you to know something I have never. That is, I do not know what to expect. My mother gave me a very vague lecture about wifely duties, but he silenced her with a kiss. We have our whole lives to figure it out together. There is no rush. If you want to just sleep tonight, that is fine. I do not want to just sleep." She felt her face heat but made herself continue. "I want you. I want to truly be your wife. I might not be very good at it." Walker smiled and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Beatrice, the fact that you want me, that you chose me, is all I need. Everything else is just us learning each other. There is no wrong way to do that." What followed was tender and awkward and perfect in its imperfection. Walker was patient, taking time to show her that intimacy did not have to be the shameful duty her mother had implied. It could be joyful, even playful. When he made love to her, he watched her face, learning what made her gasp and sigh. And when it was over, he held her close and told her she was beautiful, that she was everything he never knew he needed. Beatrice fell asleep in his arms, feeling more complete than she ever had in her life. She had found her place. Against all odds, in the middle of nowhere, with a man she had known for less than 2 weeks, she had found where she belonged. The weeks that followed were full of hard work and simple joy. Beatrice learned to cook over the temperamental wood stove, to tend the vegetable garden Miguel had started, to gather eggs from the chickens that wandered the yard. Her hands, once soft and useless, developed calluses. Her skin tanned despite her best efforts with a bonnet. She learned to rope a calf and brand cattle, to recognize which plants were edible and which were poison. She also began teaching, just as Walker had predicted. Miguel's daughter Rosa arrived with her baby son, a squalling infant named Tomás. Rosa was only 17, her husband killed in a mining accident 2 weeks before the baby was born. She was grateful for a place to stay and for Beatrice's help with the baby. In exchange, she helped with the heavier household tasks that Beatrice's still healing ribs made difficult. Word spread that the new Mrs. Quinn had been a schoolteacher, and soon children from neighboring ranches began appearing at the door. Beatrice started classes in the barn, teaching reading and arithmetic to 8 students ranging from age 5 to 13. She loved seeing their faces light up when they mastered a new concept, loved opening worlds to them through books and learning. Walker built her a desk and shelves for schoolbooks, working late into the evenings by lamplight. He was always doing things like that, small gestures that showed he was paying attention to what made her happy. He brought her wildflowers from the hills. He made sure she had time to read and write in the evenings. He listened when she talked about her students, never dismissing her work as unimportant. Their physical relationship deepened and grew more confident. Beatrice discovered that her body was capable of pleasure she had never imagined, that the connection between them extended far beyond the merely physical. Making love with Walker felt like another form of conversation, another way of understanding each other. As summer turned to autumn, Beatrice realized she had not thought about Boston in weeks. The life she had left behind felt like something from a book she had read long ago, distant and unreal. This was real. The ranch, the students, the weight of Walker's arm around her waist at night. In October, a letter arrived from her mother, forwarded through the Chinese camp school. Beatrice opened it with trembling hands, unsure what to expect. The letter was cold and formal, informing her that her father had passed away from a heart attack in August. The funeral had been held without her. Her mother suggested that now that she had indulged her rebellious phase, perhaps Beatrice would come to her senses and return home where she belonged. Beatrice read the letter twice, feeling a complicated mixture of grief and anger. Her father was dead, and she had not been there. But would he have wanted her there? The man who had disowned her for choosing her own path, Walker, found her on the porch, the letter crumpled in her hand, tears streaming down her face. He sat beside her and pulled her close, letting her cry without asking questions. Finally, she showed him the letter. "I should feel worse than I do," she said. "He was my father, but all I can think is that he died still disapproving of me, still angry that I refused to be what he wanted. And now I will never have the chance to make him understand." "Maybe he understood more than you think," Walker said quietly. "Maybe in his last moments he regretted letting you go. You will never know. But Beatrice, you cannot live your life trying to please people who refuse to see you for who you are. Your father made his choice. You made yours. Neither of you is wrong exactly. You are just incompatible. Will you think I am terrible if I do not go back for the funeral? No, and it is already over anyway. There is nothing you can do now except decide whether you want to maintain contact with your mother." Beatrice thought about it for a long time. Finally, she went inside and wrote a letter. She told her mother about Walker, about the ranch, about teaching. She explained that she was happy, truly happy, and that she hoped someday her mother could be happy for her. She provided her address and said she would welcome correspondence, but she would not be returning to Boston. This was her home now. She never received a reply. It hurt, but it was also freeing. She had offered reconciliation. If her mother could not accept it, that was her choice. Beatrice was done trying to force people to see her value. Winter came to the California hills, bringing cold rain that turned the dusty ground to mud. The ranch work became harder, and Beatrice learned what Walker had meant about the difficulties of this life. There were days when she woke before dawn and worked until after dark, when her hands were so cold she could not feel them, when she wondered if they would have enough money to buy supplies through to spring. But there were also evenings by the fire, Walker reading aloud while she mended clothes. There were snowball fights in the rare dustings of snow that reached their elevation. There were nights when they made love slowly, savoring each touch, each whispered word. There was the pride she felt when one of her students mastered reading and began devouring every book she could lend them. In December, Beatrice realized her monthly courses were late. She said nothing at first, not wanting to raise hopes prematurely. But when January arrived and she began feeling queasy in the mornings, she knew. She was carrying Walker's child. She told him on a cold evening when they were alone, Rosa having taken Tamaz to visit friends in town. Walker stared at her for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then he pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. "A baby," he whispered. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" "Happy, Beatrice. I am terrified and thrilled and so grateful I do not have words for it." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright. "Are you happy?" "Yes. I did not expect to be. I always thought motherhood was just another trap, another way to limit what women could do. But this feels different. This is ours. We are choosing it together. We are choosing everything together. That is the point." He pressed his hand to her still flat belly. "Hello in there, little one. Your ma and I cannot wait to meet you." The pregnancy was not easy. Beatrice was sick for months, barely able to keep food down. Walker fretted constantly, bringing her weak tea and broth, canceling lessons when she was too exhausted to teach. Dr. Harrison visited regularly, pronouncing everything normal but advising rest. As spring arrived and she finally began to feel better, Beatrice's belly swelled. She had to let out all her dresses and eventually resorted to wearing Walker's old shirts over her skirts. She looked ridiculous, but Walker insisted she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "You are carrying our child," he said, his hand resting on her belly where the baby kicked and tumbled. "How could you be anything but beautiful?" In June, on a hot afternoon when the cicadas were screaming in the oaks, Beatrice's pains began. Rosa ran for Dr. Harrison while Walker stayed with her, his face pale with fear. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. There were moments when Beatrice was certain she would die, when the pain was so intense she could not imagine surviving it. But Walker never left her side. He held her hand and let her squeeze until his bones creaked. He wiped her face with cool cloths. He told her she was strong, that she could do this, that he loved her more than anything in the world. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, she gave birth to a son. The baby came into the world howling his protest, red-faced and furious. Dr. Harrison placed him on Beatrice's chest, and she felt something shift inside her, a fierce protective love that dwarfed everything else she had ever felt. "He is perfect," she whispered, touching the baby's tiny fist. "Walker, look at him. He is perfect." Walker was crying unashamedly, tears streaming down his weathered face. "He is beautiful, just like his mother." They named him William after Walker's middle name. William Quinn, born in the wild California hills to parents who had found each other against all odds. He had Walker's gray eyes and Beatrice's dark hair, and from the beginning he was loud and demanding and absolutely adored. The first months were exhausting in ways that made ranch work seem easy. William nursed constantly and slept poorly. Beatrice walked miles pacing the floor at night, singing soft lullabies her grandmother had taught her. Walker took over as many of her chores as he could, working himself to exhaustion so she could rest when the baby finally slept. But there were also moments of pure joy. William's first smile, given to his father while Walker was making ridiculous faces. The feeling of his warm weight in her arms as he nursed. The sight of Walker holding his son, his big hands so gentle, his voice soft as he told the baby stories about the ranch and the animals. As William grew from infant to baby to toddler, the ranch prospered. Walker expanded the herd and built a new barn. Beatrice continued teaching, with Rosa helping to watch William during school hours. They added a room onto the house, and then another. Miguel's family grew, Rosa eventually remarrying a kind miner who adopted little Tomás. When William was 3, Beatrice became pregnant again. This time she knew what to expect, and the pregnancy was easier. She delivered a daughter in the spring of 1873, a tiny girl with Walker's features and a calm disposition that was nothing like her loud, rambunctious brother. They named her Alina, after Beatrice's grandmother. The years rolled past, marked by seasons and harvests, by children growing and the ranch expanding. Walker hired more men as the operation grew. They bought adjoining land when the neighbor decided to move back east. Beatrice's school became formalized, meeting in a proper schoolhouse that the community built together. Life was not always easy. There were droughts and harsh winters. There were illnesses and accidents. When William was 7, he broke his arm falling from a horse. When Alina was 5, she nearly drowned in the creek. Each crisis brought them together, reminded them how fragile and precious their life was, but there was also so much joy. William grew tall and strong, inheriting his father's skill with horses. Alina inherited her mother's love of books and spent hours reading in the hayloft. They had another son, James, and then another daughter, Margaret. The house rang with children's laughter and arguments, with the chaos of a large and loving family. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Walker took Beatrice riding into the hills, just the two of them for the first time in months. They left the children with Rosa and Miguel and rode east toward the mountains, following trails only Walker knew. He brought her to a high meadow filled with wildflowers, a place where you could see for miles in every direction. They dismounted and stood together, his arm around her waist, looking out at the land they had built a life on. "You ever regret it?" Walker asked. "Staying here instead of going to Chinese camp. You could have had a proper teaching position, a salary, maybe eventually move to a larger town." Beatrice leaned into him, breathing in his familiar scent. "Never, not once. This life we have built together, this family, this place, it is everything I did not know I wanted. I am exactly where I am supposed to be. Even on the hard days, when the money is tight and the work is endless and the children are driving you mad. Especially then, because we face it together. Because we chose each other and we keep choosing each other every single day." She turned in his arms to face him. "Walker, when you pulled me from that overturned stagecoach, when you said you would never let me fall again, you gave me more than safety. You gave me a chance at a real life. A life I chose with a partner who sees me as an equal. Do you have any idea how rare that is? How precious?" "I think I am the one who got the better deal," Walker said, brushing a strand of gray-streaked hair from her face. Neither of them was young anymore. The years had left their marks, lines around their eyes, calluses on their hands, a weariness that came from hard work and responsibility. But when he looked at her, Beatrice still saw that young cowboy who had run toward danger without hesitation, who had made promises and kept them. You could have had an easier life. I could have had a safer life, not easier, and definitely not happier. She pulled him down for a kiss, deep and lingering. I love you, Walker Quinn. I will love you until the day I die. And I will love you beyond that, he murmured against her lips. In whatever comes after. They made love there in the meadow, under the vast blue sky, surrounded by the wildflowers and the distant mountains. It was slower than in their youth, tempered by familiarity and the aches of aging bodies, but no less passionate. They knew each other completely now, every scar and sensitivity, every preference and fear. And that knowledge only deepened the connection between them. Afterward, they lay in the grass and talked about the future. William was showing interest in expanding into horse breeding. Eleanor wanted to go to college, though that would be difficult for a girl. They talked about how to support their children's dreams while keeping the ranch viable, about the changing world and how to navigate it. Sometimes I think about that stagecoach accident, Beatrice said, watching clouds drift across the sky. If you had not been riding that road at exactly that moment, I would have died. Or if I had survived, I would have continued to Chinese camp and lived a completely different life. We would never have met. But I was there, and you did survive, and we did meet. Walker propped himself on his elbow to look down at her. I do not believe in fate exactly, but I do believe that some things are meant to be. You and me, Beatrice, we were meant to be. She reached up and traced the lines of his face, memorizing them as if she did not already know every detail by heart. I used to think love was something that happened in fairy tales, something poets made up to sell books. But this is real. What we have is real. And it is so much better than any fairy tale. They rode back to the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the hills gold and red. Their children ran out to meet them, William helping his father with the horses while Eleanor chattered about a story she was writing. James and Margaret fought over who got to help their mother with dinner. It was chaotic and loud and perfect. That night, after the children were finally asleep, Walker and Beatrice sat on the porch they had sat on that first evening so many years ago. The stars were brilliant overhead, the coyotes singing in the distance. Walker was whittling again, making a toy horse for Margaret's upcoming birthday. "Thank you," Beatrice said quietly. "For what?" "For keeping your promise. You said you would never let me fall again, and you have not." "Not once. Even on the days when I stumbled, when I was not sure I could keep going, you were there. You caught me. You held me up until I could stand on my own again." Walker set down his knife and pulled her close. "We hold each other up. That is what partners do. That is what love does." "Yes," she agreed. "That is exactly what love does." They sat there together as they had sat hundreds of times before, as they would sit hundreds of times again. The ranch stretched out around them, the land they had tamed and loved. Inside the house, their children slept safely, dreaming their own dreams. And in the morning, they would wake and begin again, the endless work of building a life, of choosing each other, of keeping promises made in the dust beside an overturned stagecoach. The years continued to unfold, bringing the changes that time always brings. The children grew into adults. William took over more of the ranch operations, proving to have an even better head for business than his father. Eleanor did go to college, one of the first women at the University of California, and came back to establish a library in Sonora. James became a veterinarian, while Margaret married a neighboring rancher and started her own family. Walker and Beatrice grew old together, their hair turning white, their steps slowing. They watched their grandchildren play in the same yard where their own children had played. They celebrated anniversaries and birthdays, mourned the passing of friends and family, adapted to a world that was changing faster than they could sometimes comprehend. But through it all, they had each other. That promise Walker made on a hot June afternoon in 1868 remained unbroken. He never let her fall, and she never let him fall either, because that was what their love meant: constant support, unwavering partnership, choosing each other over and over again through every season and challenge. On a spring evening in 1893, when Beatrice was 62 and Walker was 65, they sat once more on that same porch. Walker's hands were too arthritic for whittling now, and Beatrice's eyes were too weak for extensive reading. But they did not need activities to fill the silence. They were comfortable together, the way only people who have spent decades truly knowing each other can be. "You remember that first evening?" Beatrice asked. "When you were carving that toy horse and I was so nervous about being here alone with you?" Walker smiled, the expression crinkling the corners of his eyes. "You were terrified, trying so hard to be brave and proper. I thought you might bolt like a spooked horse at any moment. I was terrified. Of you, of this place, of the feelings you stirred up in me. I had never wanted anyone the way I wanted you. It was frightening. Do I still frighten you? No. Now you are the safest thing in my world, my home, my heart, my partner in everything." She reached for his hand, their fingers interlacing with the ease of long practice. "If I could go back and tell that scared Boston girl what her life would become, I do not think she would believe me. I do not think she could comprehend being this happy." "I would not trade a single day," Walker said. "Not the hard ones, not the scary ones, not even the ones that nearly broke us. Because they all led here, to this moment, to a life well lived with the person I love most in the world." They watched the sun set over the hills they had worked for more than a quarter-century. Inside, they could hear Alina helping to prepare dinner, the sound of grandchildren laughing and playing. William and his wife would be arriving soon for their weekly family meal. The house was full of life and love, exactly as it should be. "I am never letting you fall," Walker murmured, echoing that long-ago promise. "And I am never letting you fall," Beatrice replied, making her own vow, the one she had been keeping all these years without ever speaking it aloud. They sat together as the stars emerged, as the world spun on, as their life together continued in all its messy, beautiful, hard-won glory. They had built something real from the wreckage of that stagecoach, from the courage it took to reach for each other, from the daily choice to keep reaching even when it would have been easier to let go. This was love, Beatrice thought. Not the fairy tale version, but something better. Something earned and tended and fought for. Something that grew deeper and stronger with each passing year, until you could not imagine where you ended and the other person began. When Walker finally passed away at the age of 78, it was peacefully in his sleep with Beatrice beside him. She held his hand as his breathing slowed and stopped, and though her heart broke, she was grateful. Grateful for the decades they had shared, for the family they had created, for every moment from that first rescue to this final goodbye. She lived another 5 years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all of them the legacy of that improbable meeting beside an overturned stagecoach. She told the story often, to anyone who would listen, wanting them to understand that love could come from the most unlikely places, that courage and choice mattered more than circumstance. When her own time came, Beatrice was ready. She closed her eyes for the last time in the ranch house Walker had built, in the bed they had shared for so many years, with her family gathered around her. Her last thought was of a young cowboy running toward danger, of strong hands pulling her from the wreckage, of a promise that changed everything. "I am never letting you fall again." He had kept that promise. And in the end, when she fell that final time, she fell knowing she had been deeply, truly, completely loved. She fell knowing she had chosen well, all those years ago when she decided to stay instead of going to Chinese camp. She fell knowing that the wild chance she took on an injured afternoon beside an overturned stagecoach had given her the richest, fullest life she could have ever imagined. The ranch continued after them, passed down through generations, each adding their own stories to the foundation Walker and Beatrice had built. The old-timers in Sonora still told the story of the cowboy and the Boston lady, how they met in the most dramatic way possible and built a love that lasted lifetimes. It became the kind of tale people told when they wanted to believe that true love existed, that courage was rewarded, that choosing to reach for happiness was always worth the risk. And every spring, when the wildflowers bloomed in that high meadow where Walker once took Beatrice to celebrate their anniversary, someone from the Quinn family made the ride out to see them. They stood in that place where love had been reaffirmed, where promises had been kept, and they remembered. They remembered that love was not just a feeling but an action, a choice made every day, a promise to never let each other fall. That was the legacy Walker and Beatrice left behind. Not just a successful ranch or a large family, but the example of what it meant to truly love someone. To see them completely, to choose them freely, to stand beside them through every joy and sorrow. To pull them from the wreckage, whatever form that wreckage took, and to keep pulling, keep supporting, keep loving until the very end. It was a love story worth telling, worth remembering, worth aspiring to. And in a world that often seemed short on genuine connection, it served as a reminder that sometimes, if you were brave enough to reach when someone was falling, you might just catch hold of forever.